Yes, good day. This is Bill Jones, recapturefederalism.com. And I have another show today, another presentation. It's Bill Jones from Freedom's Nest. Yeah, we're here at Freedom's Nest. You always want to be at Freedom's Nest and not other places. And title and subject today, Ebola distraction versus 100% infection by treason. Oh, Bill, there you go again. Yep, there I go again. What are you saying, Bill? You must have a black heart. Going to talk down about Ebola. Ebola, however they say it. Why are you talking down about that? The poor people getting this virus. It's deadly. 70% over in Africa die. No, I don't have a black heart. I'm going to tell you like it is. By the way, we had Ebola in the 1970s. We had a couple cases, not 1970, 1990s. And a couple of cases. It burned itself out, taken care of. I talk to my wife all the time about this stuff, medical stuff. And the reason, because I'm not that bright about the medical stuff, but my wife has been a nurse since 1967. That's the same year we got married. I was in the Navy at the time. We got married in 1967, so what's that, 47 years. She's been a nurse that long. And we talk about these things. First thing we both agree on is you got to quarantine countries that have contagious diseases like that. That's where you start. Try and contain it. Try to get it to dissipate. Get it cured locally so it isn't rampant. That's what you do. And that's not having a black heart doing that. That's just being smart. Yeah, that's just being smart. And of course, my wife hears about these nurses. And of course, being in that industry, that field, that profession, it hurts. And you see that. It's part of the risk. And of course, when you got political people handling stuff, that's where the problem is. And that brings me to the other half of my title and subject. See, this Ebola thing is a distraction. It's what's known as chaos. It's known as a struggle. And where do you read all about that in the class warfare? Everything is struggle. That's over the communist side there. Yep. Communism. I've been over through that. Article 3, Section 3. 3 conditions. One is aid and comfort. And the first two is an or situation. Leveling war or adhering to your enemies. We have domestic enemies of the Constitution that are adhering to the Communist Manifesto and the guidelines of the Communist Party, among other things, other documents. And they are leveling war. Now, am I saying that they intentionally put Ebola into this country? Not directly, indirectly by their public policies and violations of the public trust. Our representatives, that's not our government, the government's of the people, by the people, for the people. It's not, that's the government. The representatives in the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch are the representatives. And what are they doing? I'll tell you what they're doing. Official misconduct, misprison of their positions. What's misprison? It's an official legal There's a legal definition. It's maladministration of public duty. And that's what you got. That's what you got going on. With all these chaoses, I don't know if that's the proper plural, the struggles, if you will, and it's all communist based. That's the core problem, communism. What I really need to do, I forgot here, I need to do what I always do in all of my presentations I've been doing here lately. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to same, so help me God. I first took that oath in 1965. The enemy then, as it is now, was communism. More foreign at that time, but significantly domestic, and they keep it quiet. By the way, you hear the term progressive? Progressive is communism. Progressive means progressing from the federal system of America to communism. That's what it means. So when you hear Glenn Beck, that's all he ever talks about. He never says communism, but he always talks about progressive. I begin to wonder about him, whether he's just a profiteer or a good guy. Anyway, Ebola distraction. Ebola distraction. So what you do is you distract. You have a chaos, a situation, and as Rahm Emanuel used to say, you know, you never let a crisis go to waste. Then we got a crisis. And of course the communists use it for their benefit, to gain greater control. Communism is a totalitarian society. We have nationalized communist care now. And of course you have a medical problem, and that feeds right into that, so they can get more power, take away more liberty and freedom. Now, let's talk about the 100% infection rate of Americans by treason. You have in communism, and here lately I've been misquoting a page. I've been saying page 54. There's something important on 54 relating to back in the day by Karl Marx, talking about America way back when. This Communist Manifesto is from 1848. That's a long time ago. That's before the Civil War. They've been working on it a long time. But let me go to page 52 is the one I want to, that page I'm going to reference right now. On page 52, they go by questions. There's a question 23. What will be the attitude to existing religions? And I've gone over this before. They want to abolish all religions, except for communism. Communism is a religion. You have the prophets of Frederick Engels and Karl Marx. Okay, that was question 23. Question 21. What will be the influence of communist society on the family? Oh. If you've heard this stuff down in Houston with this gay mayor. By the way, gay is a communist term. It came in 1970s with the Phil Donahueization of America on his show. He used to talk about this time. Prior to the 1970s, it was homosexuality. Okay? And so this is how they operate. They put their terms on it, and they try to make something benign. Okay? They're trying to make it benign. It's gay. Everything's gay. Well, there are victims at times of homosexual actions. Okay? Now, down there in Houston, that's the family thing. That's how they're destroying the family. They make a big deal out of this thing. about having unisex bathrooms. They intentionally do that. That's what's known in the guidelines. There's a whole section on propaganda and agitation, and that's what this is. It's communist propaganda and agitation. And have unisex like it's a big deal. You know, when I was in the Navy, we used to pull in 1969, a couple times, we pulled into the port of Sasebo, Japan. I think it was on the island of Kyushu. We went down one day, even had Liberty down in Nagasaki, where they 24 years before that, Americans had dropped the bomb, the second bomb on Nagasaki. But we were in Sasebo. First time I had ever had it, and I've been told that in other places in the world it's the same thing. This unisex bathroom is nothing new. I was in the Navy, so of course when you go on Liberty, the first thing you're going to do is go have a beer somewhere, or a drink, wine or something. Went to a bar. And of course, after a couple beers, you know what you got to do. So there I go to the washroom, the restroom. And to my surprise, they had no signs on the door back in those days. They had no sign. So I go in, and here is a Japanese woman squatting over the hole. This is 1969. They had unisex bathrooms, and I was told by some of my shipmates, squadron mates, who'd been over to Europe, that there were places in Europe that's the same thing. No big thing. So I did my thing, and I left. Of course, it's a bar. There's no children or anything. The problem in Houston is you're getting into problems with adults and potentially having children. And that's probably not a good thing. Of course, if you're gay and you're communist, you want to impact the children because, you know, you want to educate them. The famous, and I say this all the time, the famous quote of Vladimir Lenin: "You give me your children for 8 years, and I'll give you a Bolshevik for life." And that's what you do, and that's what part of this is propaganda and agitation. We'll go back now. In between 21 and 23, of course, is 22. And what is that? What will be the attitude of communism to existing nationalities, the nationalities of peoples associating themselves in accordance with the principle of community will be compelled to mingle with each other as a result of this association and thereby dissolve themselves, just as the various estate class distinctions must disappear through the abolition of their basis, private property. That's the primary aim, by the way, of the communists, is the abolition of private property. They talk about it all the time. And I have talked about previous presentations about the immigration situation, but this is before the Ebola thing. That's why the borders are open down there. That's why all these kids come from Central America. Instead of solving the problems in Central America, these kids, this group, the fellowship group I belong to, we had this past summer, about the time that these kids were coming in, went with a Christian group down to El Salvador, Guatemala, in that region. And they visited the kids and doing some missionary work with these kids in the garbage dumps down there. And I asked George, I said, "George, why are they leaving out of there?" You know, I already had a good idea what the answer was. And George told me, it's because of corruption. The government's corrupt. So instead of fixing the corruption, you have the communist people who adhere to communism here drawing these people in because there's no borders or no boundaries. We're going to have us world communism. Now we have the Ebola situation. And again, no boundaries, no borders. Let them people travel. Doesn't make any difference how sick they are. Just bring them in because we want population control. And that's the base core of it and has to do with communism. They want to control the population. They want to have population control. That's what abortion is and all of this stuff. And so this is just another form of abortion. So we kill some people. Some people die. When that's talking about a black heart, there's nothing blacker than a communist heart. There is no soul there. Vacant. Now I'm going to go a little further. Talk about treason. Bill, where you get that from? And I'm going to go from page 52, where I was, to page 34. And it's a section called Position of Communist Party, of Communist in Relationship, let me get this right, Position of Communist in relation to various existing opposition parties. And they talk about it in the different countries. Now they said in section 2, and this was 4, in section 2 has made clear the relations of communists to existing working class parties such as the Chartists in England and the agrarian reformers in America. Back in 1848 they're writing this stuff. 1848 they're talking about this. And agrarian farmers, they're the socialist farmers up around in Minnesota, up in that area. They're still around there. Now they're Democrats. Surprise, surprise. But way down in the bottom here, and I'm going to read this. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling class tremble at the communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. And then in bold, they have working men of all countries unite. Did you hear what I just read? Did you hear it? Maybe I went too fast. Let me slow down a little bit. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They're telling you they're going to take your private property. They're totalitarians. That's what they're telling you in that one sentence. The next sentence, they openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Forcible overthrow the people of the United States, the government of the United States. That's what they want. That's what their aim is. That's what they intend to do. Let the ruling classes tremble. We're supposed to have fear of these people. Let me just a side note here. I was not intimidated by Ho Chi Minh in 1969. And I'm not about to be, I'm too old to start trembling to American communists. Okay, let me continue. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Here we go with this class struggle. You see, this is what I've said before. There's two classes. There's the bourgeois, which is the enemies of the communists, which is the middle class. And page 31, they equate conservatives with bourgeois. The other side of the bourgeois, the other class that they're going to have fighting with each other, is the proletarians. Really, as we've got all these fat, obese, poor people, there aren't too many proletarians in the United States, okay? It's just a made-up game. It's this propaganda and agitation. Do you understand? It's a game. And they never really talk They casually talk about it, but really don't get into it. You see, there's a third class. You know what the third class is? It's the Democratic Party. It's the party leadership. It's the economic allies. Okay? They work together. There's collusion. There's collaboration. There are people, capitalists without principles, who are collaborating with communists. Now, we said forcible overthrow. And I'm at 20 minutes. I try and keep it under a little bit, but I'm going to relate over to something else. Forcible overthrow. Title 18 U.S.C. Chapter 115, which is treason, sedition, and subversive activities. There are 8 or 9. I guess it's 9. There used to be 10, and 2391 was repealed. There's treason. There's misprision of treason. There's rebellion and insurrection. There's seditious conspiracy. It's all that is going on, by the way. And I can get into it deeper, and I have, and I will, and I'll continue on because it's a pretty deep subject. But 2385. Now, we just talked about the forcible overthrow. 2385. This is treason, by the way. 2385, advocating the overthrow of the government. And that's what you have going with Ebola. You see, they're going to take that chaos, and that's just part of it all. All these other chaos, all these other situations, Benghazi, IRS. IRS is a communist agency. All of this stuff, communist care, Federal Housing Authority, the decision in the Roosevelt administration, the tampering of the court by Roosevelt, who's pro-communist, that decision was a treasonable act involving the Interstate Commerce Clause. Yes, it was. It was a treasonable decision. And it wasn't the first one in the 20th century. And with that, I'll continue on with some other things in the next presentation. I've told people before, I can have a presentation every day, and I plan to live a long time. Okay, I'm only 69. I might live another 20 years. I could have a presentation every day on this stuff. It's wonderful to know about the federal system of America and all that other stuff. But there's people out there trying to destroy it, and that's what you need to know on the other side. To resist Satan, you need to identify and learn about Satan. And you can do that. There's all sorts of places to find out about that. I talk about it in these documentations. You can go in the whole Bible and find that stuff, and I quote some of those verses also. Okay, until the next time, good day.